Chapter 26. When Dan returned home, Gustavo had already left for work. He sat down at the kitchen table and read the advertisement once again. The company in question was well known throughout the States. It was a large outfit with hundreds if not thousands of employees, and that was one of the things that bothered Dan. He didn't want to be a number on a paycheck, he wanted to be his own man, yet there was one aspect of this proposition that could be attractive. He could make a lot more money being employed in that company than he would ever make in the Navy, and with that money, or what he could save, he could open his own enterprise. On the other hand, he wouldn't have the training the Navy offered him, nor would he have the benefits such as free housing. And then there was the temptation of travelling to all those places. "Which travels you would do aboard an aircraft carrier," Nicholas said as he came in the kitchen and sat down beside Dan. "And if you've ever been aboard one of these monsters, they lodge up to 2,000 men, for weeks on end." Dan looked at the little man and smiled. "Yeah, that's perhaps not the best way to see the world, is it? Besides, you would leave your lovely Malou on the shores of Florida and spend countless days waiting to return home. Not the way I'd like to live my life in this day and age." Nicholas shook his head. "And if I could ever save enough money, I could travel with Malou anywhere we pleased, couldn't we?" "Absolutely, son. There is nothing stopping you from making the choice you actually made already. The difference being that now you know, and will remember why you made that decision." "How's that?" Dan asked, a little puzzled. "You are now in full possession of the knowledge that you will not be given the opportunity to kill another young pilot or enemy in the course of duty, and that you have a brilliant opportunity to carve a future for yourself. And I could even become a licensed pilot if I wanted to, couldn't I?" "Yes, Dan. So please stop thinking of flying a Navy aircraft when there are so many other doors you could open right now." Pondering Nicholas's remarks for a moment, Dan then asked, "Do you really think I could be killing some other pilots during these missions?" "With the rumours of war roaming the heavens today, Dan, I wouldn't be surprised that you could do so very soon, in fact." Nicholas paused. "However, it is not for me to convince you one way or the other." Yes, I know, it's my choice entirely," Dan finished for Nicholas. He paused. "By the way, shouldn't you be watching over Gustavo today?" Nicholas shook his head and sniggered. "That boy doesn't need me, Dan. He's got an innate talent for driving these big semis, but don't you worry, I'll be there when you leave to rejoin your future." "Do you know when that is likely to happen?" "When you made the decision you're required to make, and act upon that decision, I should think Damianos will be here for you to take the trip." "I thought I would go back with them." "Perhaps you will. Frankly, I don't know. Maybe you'll go back alone to join them in 2013. "I guess I better get my act together and go to that company, don't I?" Dan pointed to the ad again. "I think it would be a grand idea, son." Nicholas smiled, got to his feet, and in an instant disappeared. Aboard the cruiser, Malou and the three children were having a leisurely breakfast on deck, trying to wait patiently, if that were possible, for the moment Damianos would announce their departure, setting sail for Key West. Malou said, "Why don't we take a trip along the coast and stop at some marina or other on the way? What do you say?" She looked at Stefano. "That sounds like a great idea, Mum," Daniel rejoined. "I'm getting a little antsy, waiting for our cat to come up with Dad's answer." "Do you think that's a simple decision for Dad?" Gabby objected. "If I were him, I would do what my heart tells me to do, but I'm not him." Stefano chuckled. "No, you're not Dad, that's for sure." "What do you mean by that?" Gabby flared. "I'm as much Dad's daughter as you're his son." "I'm glad you think so," Stefano retorted. "And no, I don't think any of us would have an easy time with a decision such as the one Dad has to make." "Besides, I don't think it's the decision itself that is important here," Malou interposed. "It's the fact that he needs to make it and never regret having made it." "That's what Damiano said," Gabby agreed. "Dad couldn't change the past by making a different decision than the one he had made, but he has to make it knowledgeably this time." "So you think it was a rash decision originally, do you think?" Daniel asked. "I wouldn't say it was a rash decision, no, but I don't think he was fully aware of the consequences of it back then." Malou had listened to her children attentively. She smiled. They seemed to articulate her thoughts perfectly. They were already several miles out of Key Largo and inside of Isla Morada when the clouds started gathering to the east. The wind picked up gradually while Daniel was at the wheel of the vessel. "Do you think we should worry about these?" he asked his brother while pointing to the bank of clouds to the port side of the cruiser. "I shouldn't worry about them," Stefano replied. "We'll be at the marina before they get anywhere close to us." "It's getting a little stuffy up here," Malou said, getting up from the lounge chair on the aft deck. She looked at Gabby. "Why don't we go down and get some lemonade ready? I think everybody will be thirsty." "Good idea, Mum," Gabby replied. "It's getting hot." She bent down to fold her chair when a wind gust grabbed her scarf from around her neck and took it away. "I know, that was my favourite one," she cried out, annoyed and horrified all at once. "Let's get downstairs, Gabby. I think we're in for a storm," Malou suggested, abandoning the folding of her own chair and grabbing her daughter's hand. "Look out there!" She pointed to the grey clouds advancing rapidly toward the coast. "Those are a bad sign." Are you okay?" Stefano asked when he saw his mother and sister rush down toward the stairs. "Sure, but I think you and Daniel should either get that boat anchored somewhere quickly or get down here on the double." "But we can't just leave the wheel, Mum," Daniel shouted. "Then do what you think is best, but do it quickly." Malou had stopped at the top of the stairs, watching the storm clouds approach rapidly. "These are a bad omen, son." Malou, who had lived the better part of her younger years in Haiti, knew exactly what she was talking about. She had learned to recognize tornadoes, and these clouds looked very much like one of the storms you either remember or die trying. Stefano knew his mother was right. He looked at his brother and hollered over the now howling wind. "Let's you and I get her as close to the shore as we can, okay?" Daniel didn't reply and only nodded. As the two boys tried to maintain their course, directing their vessel toward the nearest beach, the rain began to fall and the swell starting to bloat, as if the waves were inflated with more water with each wind gust, making their progress very difficult indeed. They couldn't lower anchor anywhere, no time for that. As the rain pelted down and lashed their boat tirelessly, the clouds soon elevated it of a strange darkness. Night seemed to have replaced day in a matter of minutes. The drape of water falling in front of the vessel seemed impenetrable. They didn't know where they were or where they were going anymore. Time and space appeared to have taken over the vessel and its occupants. At a loss to know what else to do, Daniel and Stefano hung onto the wheel, staying their original course, while each wave seemed to lap over the railings of the boat with every swell they climbed. "How long do you think it's going to last?" Daniel asked, shivering in his wet clothes. "I've no idea, bro. I only hope that the wind will push us onto a beach somewhere. Where's Damianos when we need him?" Daniel sounded annoyed. "I don't know, and maybe we shouldn't have come this way alone. If you mean God is trying to stop us from going to Key West, he's doing a great job of it." Stefano couldn't help but laugh at his brother's rejoinder. "You're right at that. He's probably showing us what he could do if we don't follow his guidance." "Yeah, but what I'd like to know is when we're going to touch land," Daniel said, raising his eyes to the blackened sky. "Just let us know before we crash, okay, God?" And all of a sudden, as if God had decided to give none of the warning Daniel asked for, the vessel slowly but surely carved its way onto a deserted desert. "We've hit ground!" Malou yelled while rushing up the steps. "Where are we?" "Not a clue, Mum," Daniel replied, looking around him. "Wow, this is gorgeous," Gabby exclaimed as she came to join her mother and brothers. "Look at the rainbow." The rain had stopped as abruptly as it had started, and now, as the clouds parted, a beautiful arc of colours adorned their departing backdrop. "But where are we?" Stefano asked, looking ahead of him at the stretch of sandy beach in front of a jungle-like forest. Dan hurried to turn the keys in the lock when he heard the phone ring insistently inside the apartment. Panting a little, he grabbed the receiver and said, "Hello?" "Hey, Dan, how are you?" It was Fabio. "Hi, Fabio, how are you doing?" Dan asked, happy to hear his friend's voice. "I'm fine, but what about you?" "Just great, but I'm glad you called." Dan hesitated. "I don't know." "Hold on, man, before you say anything, I've got something to tell you." "What is it?" "It's about meeting you at the hangar on the 10th. Fabio paused. "I've changed my mind. I don't think I'd want to take the training." "Me neither," Dan said to Fabio's audible surprise. "You mean you've decided to do something else?" "Yeah, I found an ad in the paper yesterday and they're hiring engineers." "That's exactly what I was thinking about, man. I wanted to take that training because of my dad mainly. You know that, but I don't think I'm caught up for it. And I've had a long talk with someone I met recently, a nice guy. You'll like him. And since he's seen what the war can do to a man, he suggested that I think about enlisting." The line went dead for a moment. "Are you there?" Dan asked. Yeah, I'm here," Fabio replied. "But tell me, did you apply for that job then?" "Sure did. I just came back from there, actually. And the good thing about it is that they asked me if I knew anyone else who would want to apply." "And what did you say?" "Well, since I didn't know you'd change your mind, I only said that I would ask you." "That's great," Fabio said. "But could you ask them to put my name down on the list? You know my background maybe better than I do myself even, and you could fill out an application for me." "Way ahead of you, man," Dan said, all smiles now. "I've taken an application form with me, and I'll fill it out for you." "Fantastic," Fabio blared at the other end of the line. "Thanks, man. I owe you one." "And when are you coming back then? Is it still on the 10th? "Maybe a couple of days before that, I don't know, but you'll see me when I get there." "Hold on." Dan didn't know how he was going to explain Gustavo's presence. "It's just that I've got that friend I told you about staying in your room." "No problem, man. We can always find another apartment or a house for the three of us. Don't sweat the small stuff, Dan. Life's not worth the worrying." "You're getting philosophical on me now?" "Not really, but I'll explain why I've changed my mind when I see you." "Can hardly wait to hear that one," Dan concluded. And after a few more parting words he hung up and exhaled a sigh of relief.